Inshallah and Ashe. Blessings to you, my energetic beings, and welcome to Musing with Tanya D podcast. If you are new to my audio medicine room, I do a theme for each year. The theme for 2024 is community, networking, communication, storytelling, getting down to the nitty gritty in our bones. This comes from the Dagara cosmology, and of course, as a reflector in human design, I rein in other assets that I do reflect upon the environment around me. This year, we're going to embark on a captivating journey into the realms of ancient wisdom along with modern empowerment. I am your host, Tanya D. I am a practicing holistic shaman medium, an otherworldly life coach, and a subtle energetic surgeon, living my reflector design. I've come off the roof. I am thrilled to guide you through a tapestry of tales that intertwine the mystic threads of storytelling, energy, and empowerment through the lens of shamanism, indigenous technologies. And in each episode, we'll delve into the age-old art of storytelling, weaving narratives that transcend time and culture. From ancient myths to contemporary narratives, we'll explore the profound impact stories have on shaping our perceptions and empowering our lives. But this podcast is not merely a collection of tales. It's a conduit for energy, a source for inspiration, a beacon of empowerment. Drawing from the ancient practices of shamanism, we'll cover the transformative power of connecting with the unseen forces that surround us. Together, we'll unlock the secrets of energy, tapping into the vast reservoirs of vitality that lie within and around us. Join me as we embark on a quest for personal growth, spiritual enlightenment, and a deeper understanding of the world we inhabit. Get ready to be immersed in the enchanting world of storytelling, energy, and empowerment through shamanism. This is Musing with Tanya D podcast, where every episode is a step towards awakening the storyteller, harnessing the energy, and embracing the empowerment that lies within us all. Let the journey begin. So our first episode of 2024, my audio room artist is Sadhu Dah. Currently at this juncture being aired, Sadhu Dah is in the Philippines with the Indigenous tattoo artist, the last of her kind, a 106-year young hand-tapping tattoo artist. She is the last of mambabatok of her generation, imprinting symbols of the Kalinga tribe, signifying strength, bravery, beauty on the skin, and a lot more, taken from a Vogue Philippines tweet. Just to open the door to whom Sadhu Dah is, a spiritual teacher, an exorcist. He has been a student of some very notable masters in Thailand. He has also been initiated through years of experience, training with inner door secrets of those traditions and many others as well. His love of learning, understanding cultures, indigenous methods. He has undergone the ritual rites, testing, trivials, I should say, the test of all tests of many traditions and customs. With careful practice and heartfelt devotion, Sadhu Dah has attained titles from various traditions as a high priest in a Wiccan coven, studied Norse magic with Jeffrey Duell, and even become a master hypnotherapist under the guidance of the Shambhala Institute. With all his collective wisdom of many masters within various lineages dating back thousands of years, you're going to find him to be well-versed in healing work just as much as personal magic and spiritual protection. So with all of that, let's welcome Sadhu Dah to my audio medicine room. How are you doing today?
Not too bad.
Not too bad. The weather's shining bright.
And we have better weather now, and I'm not feeling as rough as I did traveling all day yesterday. So, yeah, not too bad.
So let's tell my listeners a little bit about your backstory.
Which part of it?
Like, how did you adventure over into, like, you're kind of a nomadic explorer in a way, right? Of more
Yeah,
indigenous traditions.
yeah. These days, I do a combination of living off and on in Thailand throughout the year, where I host meditation retreats and study and continued practices with my masters and teachers. And when I'm not there, I'm kind of traveling all over Asia to see masters I've either met before or masters that I want to meet. One of my goals here while I'm in the Philippines, um, I don't know what her name is, but it's not going to be hard to find her. But there's like the last um, tribal woman that does the tattoos, and she's known for the famous three dot tattoo. So that's kind of one of my goals while here in the Philippines. It's a little bit further up north though. But yeah, I mainly just started off having a really weird paranormal experience, and that introduced me to my first teacher. And shortly after that, I had found myself studying under a monk unintentionally. And then at some point, I had students. I mean, it's a long story, but I'm still processing it.
So you incorporate both hypnotherapy and energy healing. Did you kind of go through a discovery with that with one of the monks you worked with?
It was one of my teachers. He's quite an incredible man. He's a Tibetan Lama, actually a Rinpoche, and he's a former, combat veteran in the Iraqi War, and he's just done just countless incredible things. It's kind of unbelievable one person can do with their life. And he taught me the true essence of what hypnotherapy is. And if we were to strip away our modern day understanding of it, hypnotherapy at its core can be traced back to the oracles of Delphi, the ancient Vedantic sleep temples thousands of years ago. Even when we talk about Renaissance and Francis Mesmer, I mean, this is what Native Americans, when they talk about soul retrieval, this is hypnotherapy. But in the West, we kind of put it in this little box that we can understand. But hypnotherapy as a whole is a very ancient healing art. So why would we not implement energy work with it?
Absolutely. I find in the West, everything needs a label. And we've gotten away from the origins of things. It's like the bass note. They're, people aren't hearing the bass note. They're trying to uh, carry it away from its origins.
But if you do that, you lose the overall rhythm and the natural order of how it functions.
Exactly. That was my whole point. Even the Native Americans here, what the West has done to them is like, ugh, it just makes my soul ache.
Yeah, it's always seemed like those who hold the keys of past wisdom suffer the most as modernization comes through.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you talk about magic and performing rituals, because that's the indigenous rituals, like of the indigenous people of like you've traveled to various lands and their rituals are more indigenous to their culture, right? To the land that they're on, the spirits of the land.
Yes. And there is often some crossover, which is really influenced through the mingling of cultures throughout, time, such as when we look at India and we look at some of the Brahmins and these different yoga priests, and these individuals talk about a certain, deity known as Rahu. And in the culture of India, Rahu is kind of considered to be like a negative thing, a negative being. But when you look at Thai culture, even though Rahu is taken from India's culture, Rahu is actually a go-to spirit to work with, a go-to deity. So it's very interesting because the Thai people do acknowledge that, their understanding of Rahu comes from another culture, but they viewed this being in a very, very different way.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So with Rahu in Thai culture, we're talking about an entity, a spiritual being of a higher celestial category that is known for consuming bad karma and transmuting it. He's also known for being worked with um, for increasing luck, for gambling, for all kinds of things that are more materialistic. But when you get into the more advanced workings, I mean, literally transmuting karma is not such a simple thing. But in India, Rahu is considered to be a being of bad luck and misfortune. So it's very interesting because it's like complete opposite.
That is interesting.
And I
Y-
actually have a sakyant of Rahu on my ribs.
Oh, wow. So you also do exorcisms and some spirit crossings?
Yes. Um, Depending upon the client, if I'm doing a spirit crossing, I will either, and this is a very interesting combination of hypnotherapy and energy work. I will take somebody that maybe doesn't have refined psychic ability or isn't as sensitive, and I will put them into a hypnotic trance state, and I will get in rapport energetically with them, and I will kind of bring them on my level psychically, to put it in simple terms. And then I will summon the spirit using essentially invocating to evocating it. And then once I have the spirit there with me, I hold this space where I allow the person to meaningfully say goodbye as if they were talking right there with that person still alive. I mean, I've had a lot of people had powerful experiences. They could feel their mother hugging them. They could hear their father's words in their ears. And they could see the detail very, very vividly. And it's interesting because all that is just a combination of hypnotherapy, energy work, and for simplicity's sake, mediumship. And that right there is one of the things I do with the spirit crossing. With exorcisms, it really depends on the culture I'm working with. As if I am working with a Christian family, um, they might find some of my chants and kata and ritual practices to be evil or scary, and they don't understand it. And we're in a situation that is of utmost importance to solve, the what's attacking this family. And we maybe don't have time on our side for me to sit there and explain why this isn't bad, why you have a misunderstanding, and it's not even my place to try to convert or change someone's beliefs or views. So I got good at working in other paradigms. So I can do the anabagoic prayer, and I can use Christian mysticism, and I can work with people in that category. Or I can go Vedic and use practices of India and yoga. Or I can do the Thai style, which I prefer most, but I work with what the client needs to help them.
So it's like you do understand their base notes of where they're coming from, right? That's
It
probably,
has a stronger effect.
oh yeah, absolutely. It's the terminology that different people have for different understandings. That makes sense. So let's dive into animism.
Oh, my favorite.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
What do you want to know?
Well, let's go into your take on it, the indigenous nature of it. So for me, like I know in the shaman I worked with, Malidoma, the indigenous technologies of the spirit of West Africa and the rituals we performed were indigenous to his culture and to his land. And hopefully those don't get dissipated over time and space. Same with the indigenous people of the reindeer shamans in Mongolia. So I'm sure it's like it is universal, but yet I feel like that really is a blending, but yet kind of a stretching all at the same time.
Yeah, and I think a very important note that is often left out when we talk about these indigenous practices and old style, animism, is because of how, I mean, when you look at the Native Americans, for a good example, in history, at that period when they were being, let's be blunt, when they were being wiped out, uh, what did they do first? They painted them as savages. They painted them as uneducated, as backwoods. They gave them a very negative, their beliefs, their practices, their life. They gave a very negative and primitive type of explanation and why they are less than us. And I think that because in different cultures, the way society has progressed and we've seen colonization on a global scale, in a lot of ways, whether people mean to or not, I think they subconsciously adopt this mind frame of those practices and those ways being primitive in like a negative context, and they don't understand that these practices and these old religions are actually very, very complex and very scientific and deep, so deep. It's not simple at all. It's very complicated, actually.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of it, I feel like it's kind of like the other day I saw it as an algorithm. Like people are on a different algorithm. And if their algorithm isn't understanding of something, usually it's fear, right? People tend to, if they don't understand something, they become fearful, um, or their ego kind of gets scratchy. Is kind of what that feels like to me. But
Oh
I
yeah.
totally the other world, that's what I call it, the other world, the beings of the other world, and to connect with them. And sometimes it gets negative. Even today I did a divination for a gentleman, and he specifically asked me where he was blocked, and I was like, it showed up in the shells. I was like, well, you're blocked in the spirit world. It's like you don't want to listen to spirit. And he assumed it was like having a deity and an altar. And I was like, no, spirit is everywhere. It's not like
Yeah.
specific. So I kind of had to go through that and, pull that weed for him, that it's everywhere and every when. There's not like a specific setting, but he was blocked as far as listening to the other world, the beings there, whether it's an ancestor, an animal totem, whatever, spirit guide, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I wanted to understand more about something similar to that. And one of my teachers in Thailand, he explained to me it's not that, and I'm paraphrasing his broken English, but he explained to me that it's not that every object or every living thing has a spirit. And I really liked how he put it, because it's everything has the potential for life force to connect.
Absolutely.
That was profound for me.
Yeah, definitely. So when you do your indigenous rituals, do you mostly focus on the land, the area that you're in, obviously?
It depends on what I'm doing. For example, in Thailand, I mean, we have more Buddhist holidays than I would swear days in the calendar, you know? And so there's a lot of ceremonies that are very dependent upon, um, the masters involved, what this holiday or this religious day is. And it has its own approach. But then there's other things where, like, if I'm working with Nang Tani is a banana tree goddess. And if I'm working with her, then I need to be in the jungle, and I need to find a special banana tree that have the red flower. So not just any random banana tree. And usually you have to go deep in the forest. And I could do that in other Asian countries as well, not just Thailand, because that is an available environment. Now, if I went somewhere that didn't have jungle and didn't have, the special banana tree, then how am I going to do a Nong Tani working? I simply can't. But I guess you could make the same argument for if you're trying to do a working with, undines or some sort of water elemental being or deity, then you obviously need to have the element of water present. Even if it's a cup of water, it doesn't have to be you in the ocean, although that is kind of a nice aesthetic for the senses. But you need to have certain elements, um, certain things in your environment when you're working in the indigenous practices, more so than I would say like a ceremonial magician, and how they can put their circle or their, their candles and everything anywhere, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you, when you travel, do you like search for something similar to that in wherever you're at, if that's kind of what you're searching for, something similar?
Well, it was very confusing for me when I was learning from different sources like Indonesian and Malaysian and even, Filipino now. It's they're so similar in the sense that they have this indigenous way of living and practicing these old beliefs depending on where you go. Malaysia, for example, is majority Muslim now, but you can still find old Taoist sections in some parts, but you got to look for them. But what was confusing for me was seeing how entirely different the practices were. I'd go to do something that seemed similar to what I knew from Thailand and Indonesia. And then the shaman's like, no, that's not how we do it. We do it like this. And I'm like, huh, this is not how I would have done that.
Yeah, I was wondering that specifically, the differences between like different like villages really, right?
Oh, yeah. For one of the interesting traditions that I found was the Karen tribe, which you can find a good amount of them still in Myanmar and northern Thailand. But they have this practice where if the son, specifically the son, if he goes to the city, if he leaves the village and he comes back before he's allowed to step foot in the house, the father must wash his feet. And to me, that was like very interesting because I'm thinking, well, the father is almost taking the submissive, act in a sense, and washing the feet of his son. Shouldn't the son be like washing the hands of the father or something like this? But no, it's and when I had my friend Jitrikorn explain it to me why they do this, he said because they don't want me to bring anything that could be like negative, any bad kind of spirit, any bad energies. They don't want me to bring it into the village. They don't want me to bring it into the home. And because the father usually carries the most complete uh, traditional practices, they're kind of the shaman of each family. They think that that person has the most power, so they should be the one to do the cleansing act itself. So when you look at it on the surface, it can kind of look different than when you actually understand why it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of their tradition, their cultures. So how many different tribes and indigenous I want to say indigenous that's not the word. So how many different varieties of tribes have you worked with?
I couldn't really tell you off the top of my head, but at least have to be a couple of dozen.
So does one stand out more than another, or have you found that you were like
Um,
initiated more in one versus another?
the one that I have the most practice with and submersion in, as far as culture goes, is the Lucy or Ajarn lineage, which would be like the forest shamans of Thailand. And what's fascinating about their line of lineage is it comes from Siam, so before 14th century Thailand. when it was a region known as Siam, before Buddhism was ever brought to Thailand. And you had the fusion of Cambodian barang, which is like black magic, from there. You had a fusion of Burmese nat worship from Myanmar. It was like they would worship their ancestors in coconuts. So you would see like trees with coconuts in their homes, and giving food offerings, and it was this area at that time had a lot of influence in Thailand specifically, because Thailand was in the middle, right? So it was getting it from all sides. And then when the king in 14th century decided, okay, we're Buddhist now. This is what I find really interesting, because you see hints of this across different cultures, like with the Santeria, and so the king said, we're going to be Buddhist now. We're not doing this animistic old stuff anymore. That's not who we are. We're Buddhist now. But the Buddhism blended into the animism. So while in the Lucy and the Ajarn lineage, we practice kata, homage to the triple gems, and we honor the Buddha, and we accept these different means of, like, donations to the temples, the watts, and working with the monks and making sankatan and giving panku and things like this, is like just different ways to honor. It's not actually origin in the Lursi and Ajarn lineage. If anything, it's more based in the practices of, like, working with the spirits of the land and using animal parts and things of this nature. Like, we have a yak bone that you draw across the palms to pull bad energy out, and then you have to cleanse the yak bone with Naman water, which has to be prepared ahead of time with a special mitmor, which is usually made from nails that are flattened from the rooftop of a wat that have been saturated with monk energy and chants for decades. And I mean, it's just like every little part. It's like, yeah, I'm not just dragging this yak bone across your hand and pulling out energy. It's like there's a lot of things that happen before and after that. And you might only, as a client, or as somebody who comes there to receive a blessing or healing, you only see one little part of it, and that's your experience in it. But there's a lot of stuff we do before and after that you don't see.
Yeah, it's the preparing, right? You got to get all the ingredients of this world or not. And then you've got to create the sacred space, the process, and then you got the other side of it too. Kind of like the cleansing and the cleaning up, the other part of it.
Yeah, one of my favorite ceremonies that I participated in was, we did excuse me, we did this big 3-day ceremony. And I mean, by the end of the preparations, it was impossible to not be in a trance state, just continuously, because there was like kata chanting for blessing, this offering element and this and that. And it was a whole process. I have videos of it on my YouTube, but my favorite part of it was at the end, we had all this food. We had watermelons, and I mean, in Thailand, $300 USD worth of food, that is a lot of food. Like, I mean, a lot of food. So we had 3 tables full of just fresh fruits, vegetables, desserts, candies, sweets, baked goods, meats, everything you can think of. And this was all um, for a 72 blessings of the gods and calling them down. There's like 12 that originate from the highest heavens, 14 that come from the lower heavens, and so on to spirits into the earth. And you're calling them down in succession. And each time they come, they're all blessing everything. And then afterwards, we called all the local people in the area and give them the food. And so by giving them the food, they take part in the ritual. they're not allowed inside during the ritual. But once it's finished, they take the food and they receive all this good karma and good merit from the gods blessing this food. And they know that. And so they eat it. And some of the food that is like first pick, like, everybody wants, is the one that's covered with the incense ash on it, you know? And yeah, they eat this food, they share it with their neighbors. And it's so fascinating because we put all of the work, all of the energy, financial resource, our time, all of it into this just to give it all away.
Yeah, it's like a gratitude blessing forward. Yeah, I can see that.
And the funniest part about it is when you do something like that genuinely from the heart without an expectation, a lot of times you get blessed in ways you don't predict or see coming.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. So let's dive into some collective wisdom from the different masters that you've collaborated with. Is there something that you find yourself doing more often versus something else, whether it's personal medicine or magic or spiritual kind of energy? Like I know it says spiritual teacher and exorcist. Like I feel like the exorcist part, that's just something that's probably you just do of your own free will. Because if you're like me, you kind of get that tapping, and spirits like going, you got to go over here.
Oh, a lot of times I go looking for cases. So I will dive into paranormal forums online of different kinds. I will Google when I travel somewhere, like most haunted places in this city or this area. And I mean, I go looking for trouble. Uh, so I also get a lot of people that contact me as well. And it's the one part of my work I don't charge anything for is if you have an exorcism, if you have a haunting, there's no question about it. I'm going to help you, and there's no discuss of financial, compensation. And I had somebody pointed out one time, and I thought it was kind of interesting because I'd never thought of it that way. They said, "So let me get this right. The most dangerous thing you do, the stuff that has got you hurt the most, like physically, mentally, spiritually throughout your life, the most dangerous part of your job, you do that for free. You only charge for everything else, but that you do for free." And I said, "Yeah, I guess so, huh?" It was, and my heart is in it, and I've had some terrible experiences, but you know, it's something about seeing somebody being able to feel like they can breathe and live again. Can't really put a price on that or gratitude.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've experienced that a few times myself. And
My
it's
oh, go ahead.
no, I was just agreeing. Yeah, exactly. I just, yeah, you can't put a price on that. It's priceless. There's like, yeah,
I think the practice that I find myself doing the most that I just genuinely fall into is finding quiet places, um, a section of beach or like a park or something. And I do my Qigong practices and I just immerse myself in it. And I call it my me time. Um, some people would use the terminology sadhana or daily spiritual practice. And, when I'm doing that, that's the only thing that's happening. It, I mean, it sounds like a cop out answer, but yeah, that's my deepest moments. I love doing that.
absolutely. So do you have a daily practice since you
I
brought that up?
do. Yeah, I do. Every day when I wake up, it depends upon if, I feel like I need coffee right away or, you know, where I'm at mentally. But I start off with internal chanting as I'm going about getting, my teeth brushed, shower, all that. So I internally chant. I go through a bunch of different kata that I know, and it's almost like I do it on autopilot now. So I don't really think about it, and sometimes I'll catch myself internally chanting and be like, "Oh yeah, But I do that, and then I will do a qigong practice, either snake swallows moon with earth breathing, or for those who are not aware, just think of Tai Chi if you're familiar with Tai Chi. So it's an intentional moving practice that's kind of a combination of meditation, martial arts, and yoga. And when I go through my sets of that, then I'll usually have a breakfast, do a bit of my day, that kind of, all happens. And then when I get a moment, then I will do either, depending on the day, I alternate. I'll either do a silent sitting meditation for, a little period of time. It might be a few minutes, it might be an hour. It just depends where I am in that moment. And then on alternate days is like my physical burnout. Like I used to be an aerial acrobatic, so I'll do like intense workouts, a lot of core workouts, and that is kind of how I alternate between those two sides of myself, the yin and the yang expression of my soul.
Oh, wow. So do you find yourself you're like in a trance state?
When I'm doing the qigong, it's more of, I mean, I guess you could say trance, but I would describe it as a stillness and just being very present in each movement of my body, and my mind is kind of on a quiet place there. But when I do um, the workouts, and when I do um, the sitting meditations, yeah, I definitely get into a pretty deep trance state.
Well, I almost feel like you're in a different reality observing people.
For me, what I've noticed through the years with my practices is that I've become more grounded, and I have become more present and aware in my daily life, in the majority of what I do. Granted, sometimes I can be a little bit unpresent, if I'm doom scrolling on Reddit or something like that, right? So, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
go
you're in the
walking
now.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
you're embodied. You're fully embodied.
And when I walk around, I often notice things that I feel like other people aren't noticing, and it's strange to me. It's obvious.
I love it. That's so cool. So now talk to me about the indigenous shamans you're looking for going to go experience in the Philippines. What drew you to that?
Uh, it's a combination of different things. One of them is a friend of mine who is Filipino, was like, "Oh, you're into this kind of stuff. Well, here's a couple of things from my country. While you're there, you might be interested in going to check out." So it was getting, a little bit of influence from somebody that knew a little bit more on this culture than I did. So that was helpful. And then the second thing is, I swear I'm like some kind of Indiana Jones in a way, because I go on these weird and crazy, sometimes terribly, terribly awful adventures, just for this one moment of meeting, this master, who half the time I need a translator because they don't speak any English. And so it's like it seems more magical when you tell it as a story than the actual experience is. Like when I went to Borneo, and went to Billet, and it's in Sabah, near on the Kenabatangan River, and they have the river people there. And there was like this guy I wanted to meet, didn't even know his name, so I had to trek through jungle, had to have three guides. There was some kind of like I think it was like a leopard stalking us at one point, and that was actually scary, you know. But the guide was telling us like it's not gonna like they're predators of opportunity, so they're not gonna attack three of us walking. They'll stalk us, for miles, but then they're not actually gonna attack us. But that still doesn't make you feel better. And I got eaten up by mosquitoes, and then finally meet this man, and the things that I wanted to learn from him, there was really no way to, like, my guide, his English was good enough to translate for us, but some of the spiritual terminologies and questions I had, he wasn't really able to convey. So I got like partial answers, and then there was a lot of redirecting the questions. So when you tell people, oh, yeah, like I met this old shaman like deep in the river, kind of a Tangan in Borneo, they're like, oh, that sounds cool. And I mean, yes, it was, but not what your imagination probably thinks. And the weirdest one that I met was also in Borneo, and this was near Ranau, by Mount Kinabalu. And there was a man who had been reported to bring children back to life. And there's a lot I can't necessarily say about it, but what I can say is they have to be recently dead. And then if they're recently dead, the person, usually a parent, has to exchange the amount of life that they would normally have cut in half. So if I was going to live 50 more years, I'm agreeing to give 25 of those years to either the shaman, the child. I don't know how that all works. He didn't really explain it, but he brought several children back to life at the cost of taking life. So it was like a balance and exchange. And what I found really interesting and so uncomfortable about this was, I'm pretty sure this man is a dark practitioner, but he's helping his community as much as he's feared by his community. And there was something questionable he wanted me to drink, and he wanted to show me something. I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm not going to partake in that. I'm not going to give you that permission for something I don't understand. So sometimes I go to meet people that someone would not necessarily want to learn from if they're on a certain path, but I'm about observing the culture. I'm about absorbing, the spiritual traditions. So if I find out about something like this, I'm gonna want to go and investigate it a little bit more, even if this isn't a master I want to lay down at their feet and say, teach me everything.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. I actually had a similar experience in Mongolia with one of the shamans there, and how he worked was totally different than another one. And I literally watched him just fly off the floor and be in a standing position, after chanting and singing and removing cancer out of a lady. There was something like that, and it witnessed the whole thing. It was pretty fascinating. Same thing, and then I witnessed things that nobody else could see. So yeah, that totally. So you have a book. Talk about the
Uh,
Cosmic Healers template.
I have two books out right now. One is the Cosmic Healers Template, and that is they range from introduction to quite advanced energy healing techniques and practices, and can work within any tradition that someone follows. I mean, it's energy. Energy isn't inherently belonging to one category or another. And then I have the modern demonology book, and that one, if anybody is interested in the paranormal, I highly, highly suggest that, because I go over, we use demon as just like a term that people know, but malevolent non-human entities of a quasi-physical nature, I explain what they are, different classifications of them, where they come from, how the stagings from a haunting progressing to possession occur, and what are the symptoms, and I go over different types of fae and etc. And yeah, I mean, it's very, very in depth. And I have paranormal protocols and countermeasures in there as well. So yeah, anybody who's like a paranormal nerd or is interested in demonology, you would love it.
And then you have coming soon the Magician's Tool Chest.
Yes, that's going to be a bit of a grimoire.
Absolutely, 100%. And then meditating in a cyber world. That sounds like I want to call it a virtual reality that you're meditating in.
Yeah, it's funny because we sometimes get caught up in our daily lives and we forget that you can take time even while busy. I mean, what is 1 minute out of countless minutes you waste in a day? Even if you work a 9 to 5 and you've got overtime to put in and all this, there are several minutes throughout the day that you just burn through and waste. Everybody does it, myself included. So why not collect those minutes together or harness them in those moments and use them to propel your own spiritual practice, even if it's just inch by inch each day?
Absolutely. I do that while driving.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, in the car. So let's go back to the magician's tool chest. Are these actual items or you're showing people how to create their own grimoire?
Uh, it's going to be a, I would say, a combination of how to make certain ritual tools and work with them, and then also certain actual rituals themselves and how to conduct and carry them out. Um, I kind of like the way one of my teachers referred to himself. He is a student under a particular teacher who trained with Bruce Lee. And they have videos and stuff together where, they, it's like he has a mountain of proof that shows like he's not just one of those, yeah, when me and Bruce, So the reason why I'm mentioning this is there was a lot of backlash against Bruce Lee that maybe some are not aware of. And that was because he took inner door secrets, inner door practices that were reserved for when the master thought you were ready for it. And he just gave it away to people. And a lot of these older masters and a lot of these diehards in this martial arts community, they hated Bruce for it. They thought he was a chauvinistic, showman. And there's two sides of that, because if he hadn't done that, we would not have seen the huge explosion of interest, dedication, and practice to martial arts that we see in our modern day. And certain styles and teachers would have never been, born, right? And the other side of it is some stuff does need to be safeguarded for the well-being of the whole, right? And that's kind of what this book is going to be a little bit controversial in, is because I'm going to be giving away some secrets that have been guarded for centuries. And it's not just like, I mean, what I had to go through to learn some of this is freaking insane. I mean, I was in a room. It's going to sound so ridiculous. I was in a room with Dr. Fish. So his name in English translates as Dr. Fish, but he's this old blind former monk. And so I had this blind man named Dr. Fish who had me in this room on like this like crusty little mat, and I had to like chant this kata that he was saying really, really fast, and I couldn't quite catch it. I normally have to record it, slow it down, I write it out phonetically, and then that will help me memorize it over time with practice. He was trying to teach me this one thing, and he just kept beating me with a switch, like with a reed, like just whenever I'd pronounce it wrong, he was just beating me with it. And it's like, oh no, this is how I was taught this one, and this how my master taught it. It's the only way you can learn this. I taught my students that same chant without beating them. So I
That's
think
hilarious.
there has to be, we're in the modern day. There has to be a change in some ways. if we don't want to lose the old ways, we need to find a way to integrate them in the new day.
Yeah, I think too, though, it's kind of like telling a story. You have three people go to the same village, see the same thing, and they're all going to share what happened in their three different verses.
Exactly.
Right? Gets lost. So I love that. So the Cosmic Healers template and the demonology for the modern age, that one's not quite out yet.
The demonology for the modern age is out. That one launched like a month ago, and that's like more than 100 something pages, and it is a little bit dense, but also has a lot of my case files in there of some of the worst paranormal cases I've done.
Absolutely. So is there anything else your heart wants to share with my audience? I'm kind of curious about the Bruce Lee thing too, because I'm kind of wondering if there was something that happened, a misstep for his life and his son based on the
Well,
backstory.
from what my teacher had told me, what you what you heard happen and the different conspiracies, about him being murdered, right? It it's complicated because we can't actually prove that he was murdered. That it's just not the proof there. And when you look at it, it was an accident. And so it's kind of one of those things where you want to see more than there is there. And there's other elements in play that really really make that conspiracy sound so good, you know? I mean, especially when you think about it, he made so many people angry giving away this knowledge. But the reality is sometimes things are what they seem to be on the surface level. And yeah, it's funny like that because that's I guess you could say cognitive dissonance in a way where people want to believe, oh, this isn't the truth, this makes so much more sense, and there's these fringe little pieces of evidence, and oh, did you hear about that? No, it really was as simple as it was presented.
Absolutely. So is there anything else you want to share with my listeners?
um yeah, I would like to say that when it comes to stepping forward into indigenous practices, the best way that you're really going to learn is submersing yourself in that culture. And I don't really like to be that guy when I say this because I know it's not necessarily feasible for every person. And don't let that be a deterrent. But if you want to study, like Thai animism, yes, you might be able to get lucky and find a teacher like me. We're not necessarily putting ourselves all over the place on a global platform, easy to access, but you're going to get so much more if you go to Thailand and you submerge yourself there. And it's the same, I guess, if we talked about the reindeer people. I mean, I could probably find some stuff online, and if I'm lucky, maybe be able to take some lessons from someone like you who's spent time there. But if I really, really wanted to learn more about these cultures and these practices, would you not say that it's best for me to actually meet the reindeer people?
Absolutely. I'd tell you to dive in. I'd connect you with people to get you on your journey 100%.
Yeah, so I guess that's just what I would like to additionally share is that don't stop yourself from submersing into another culture, into those practices with those people, those communities. I mean, your life will transform just by that experience alone, just being involved with it.
Yeah, being immersed in their culture and not letting, the conditioning of our minds stop you from traveling overseas. Yeah, exactly. Like I had a lot of people ask, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" Well, a lot of people I think
Yeah, so
they don't really understand the indigenous wisdom or the technology because they haven't immersed themselves in the spirits of the land and the place where it actually originated from. And then it gets, uh, it kind of gets disenfranchised in a way. Like you said, you really need to dive in and experience it. You could read a book, sure, but it's definitely more advantageous to travel into these places and connect at a whole nother level.
Yeah, it reminds me of something I'll never forget when I first met Lucy Lek Pakdee, and I was, going to his home, which is like a temple of sorts. It's very strange. He's got all kinds of weird totems and things around. But this picture of Lumpur Kak is like a big master, and he's been dead for 6 years now. And the first thing you have to do is take off your shoes, go in front of the altar. You have to buy this vitamin drink at the store, and you have to bring it to him, swap out the old one with the new one. And Lumpokek smoked cigarettes. He loved his cigarettes, and you would light a cigarette for him and put it in the little tray, and then you tell him how your day was, um, and you just basically talk to his photo. And okay, I get some element of that. And Lursilek Bhakti would always say that he can hear you, and you can ask him for things, like you can make wishes to him. And then one day we're having a ceremony, and we call Lumpokek into the ceremony, and there was a chair, and the chair slid across the floor all on its own, and one of the cigarettes, it was not lit, spontaneously combust and like burned all the way to the filter fast, like within like a second, and I looked over and I was like, whoa, Lumpokak's here. And he's like, my teacher looked at me, he goes, of course he's here. Duh, I told you we were calling him here. And
And the thing is, you cannot make the shift up. If people weren't with you and witnessing it, they have no clue and they just think you're like speaking out of your left toe or something. It's like, no.
yeah, I have just seen so many weird things that, if somebody tells me, oh yeah, I'm gonna go see the crocodile people, of the Congo, I'm like, all right, cool.
Absolutely. Well, you've been a treasure. I'm excited to hear about your latest adventure going on this nomadic excursion in the Philippines.
Yeah, after this, I head back to Thailand in the middle of January, and I'll be there for a few months, and then taking off to Hong Kong. So I'll be sure to keep in touch, share you little bits with you along the travels.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And with that, I'll see you on the other side. Ashe, blessings. If this episode inspired you in some magical way, please take a screenshot of you tuning in on your device, post it to your Instagram stories, your TikTok, or wherever on the networking highway you may be, tagging at the Tanya D. You can also register for my mini series, Origins Revolution. I'll have the link for that in the show notes. Also, if you'd like to donate to the show to keep this momentum flowing, my show is a donation series. And to connect with Sadhu Dah, the information to gather and collect his wisdom, his technologies, is also in the show notes. And as always, I look forward to this 2024 year of community, networking, and gathering of online wizards and communication. I'll see you on the other side. Once again, blessings and ashe to you and for you.